If you told me a few years ago that a Puss in Boots movie would be Oscar nominated, I wouldn't believe you. But here we are. Want to know why it's the best Shrek movie in almost 20 years? It's similar to Shrek 2. Ask anyone what their favorite Shrek movie is. Chances are, they're gonna say it's the second one. Let's be real, it was a banger.
Give us a hug, Shrek, you old love machine. And look at you, Mrs. Shrek. How about a side of sugar for the Steve?
Donkey.
What that movie did was take everything good and magical about the first one and level it way up, a guaranteed marker of success in a franchise. When you look at Puss in Boots 2, it did the same thing. Everyone has mixed opinions about the first one, but there were a whole lot of good moments and it held our interest. Even if the realistic style kinda bordered on creepy at times, the fact that the second one built up on Puss's personality and hardships is genius. Not to mention how they deviated from that almost scary realistic style and opted for a Spider-Verse type animation. This brought more freshness and more pizzazz into something that was already super interesting to begin with. Plus, there was this idea of mysticalness, something very fairy tale-like, which is the essence of Shrek as well, right? It was super obvious in the earlier movies, but once the third and fourth ones rolled around, that kind of magical vibe wasn't there. You got the best of both worlds with Shrek and Puss in Boots 2.
People of Córdoba!
It's Del Mar!
People of Del Mar! Accept this golden gift!
The main characters conveyed something deep and managed to be comedic and fun. It's that sweet, sweet balance that drives a movie home, y'all. Speaking of that balance, you can't deny that the Shrek franchise tanked at a certain point, but where did it go wrong exactly? This one is a bit unexpected. Shrek failed at world building. When it comes to a franchise, you gotta strike a balance so that it doesn't become something it wasn't. Not convinced? Let me explain. After Shrek 2, the films became a bit too jokey. Callbacks and references started to dominate every scene, and every character just seemed to be there for comedy. Don't get me wrong, I love the humor. It just becomes a bit boring and overdone if it's all that's there. The actual moral of his fairy tale is something super deep, especially if you consider how big the franchise became in Hollywood. It was all about loving someone beyond their looks. Let's not forget Fiona chose to be an ogre instead of a human because she loved Shrek so much.
Where were we?
Oh, I remember.
What's more, it's starting to become just about the main character. Sure, the Green Ogre is great, lovable, and grumpy guy, but what about the rest of the characters in his story? They started getting sidelined a lot. Let's face it, there's so much potential in all of them. You have Eddie Murphy voicing Donkey. That in itself is a goldmine. More screen time for Donkey? I'll petition for it. Puss in Boots 2 fixes this specific flaw that held Shrek back in terms of world building, because we got so much out of every other role. Kitty Softpaws and Perito were as important to the story as Puss was.
You don't cross Jack Horner.
What is this? Are you a pirate now?
Not to mention all the fairy tale icons like Jack Horner and Goldilocks. But this isn't to say that Shrek's over. Nope, not at all. Puss in Boots 2 revived Shrek. This is a bit obvious, but it mightn't be for those who haven't seen it yet. Spoiler ahead. So, at the end of the movie, Puss, Kitty, and Perito embark on a boat for new adventures.
Yeah, it makes us look ridiculous.
Too late now, it's official.
Yeah, Tigo!
And they're going to meet old friends over at Far, Far Away. With this post-credit scene, it's pretty clear that a Shrek 5 is absolutely gonna happen. Not only that, but its box office success just can't be ignored. It even got an Oscar nomination. All the hype just proves that people still want to see more from the Shrek world. Puss, after all, started as his little thieving sidekick. It's not just a nostalgic meme, you guys. It's very possible that if they focus on world building and different animation styles, the next Shrek movie could be a huge hit. I think it would take notes from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, because it's a superb way of making a killer movie and honoring its characters. When you think about it, each creature was given importance, especially Perito. They did a wonderful job of exploring a new character and making him so lovable. That being said, I'm sure some of you have doubts about Shrek's popularity right now. Let me break down the crazy cultural impact the OG movies had. Shrek lives on in pop culture. He isn't just a movie character. To say that would be a massive disservice to his legacy. Before you ask me why I'm talking about an animated green ogre like this, think about how pop culture changed after he was born. Young Gen Zs still know and love him, even though most of it is through memes. Remember that Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life era on YouTube? Yeah, I kinda wish I wouldn't, but oh well. Back when it came out in 2001, it defied the idea that animation was just for kids. A lot of adults and mature audiences watched and enjoyed it, and still do to this day. Other than the adult humor that flew over our heads as kids, the story itself is something that appealed to every audience. This is something Puss in Boots 2 did very well too. What's more is the cast is so iconic. Both kids and grown-ups couldn't help but love them. Come on, Cameron Diaz, Eddie Murphy, and Mike Myers in one movie? Iconic. Now that I've talked about the past, what about the future? This next thing might cause a divide between fans. Puss in Boots can take over the franchise. This is just a guess, folks. As much as I love the Green Ogre, I can't help but notice that his orange furry friend in Boots is getting all the attention right now. That's mainly because we've just gotten a new movie centered on him, and there hasn't been a peep out of Shrek since Forever After. So it makes sense why one is more popular than the other at the moment. But will he outgrow Shrek? There's no way of telling so far. Knowing that the movie teased a fifth Shrek, they'll have to tie in the two character stories for it to make sense. We'll see him, Fiona, and Donkey back on screen and shine in all their glory. But things are gonna be different because Puss might just play a bigger role in the whole thing. Keep in mind, this is just one way they could go about continuing the franchise. There's another path they could take, and you might love it or hate it. Shrek taking the lead, as he has all this time. The writers for The Last Wish seem to recognize what captures an audience and keeps a franchise fresh, so they might not put Puss in the limelight all the time. After all, that's the mistake the OG franchise made with the ogre himself. It became all about him and got a little complacent. If they go down this route and do it right, it could very well create a balance between who gets more screen time and focus. I know I miss seeing the big green guy on screen, but I also miss seeing Fiona and Donkey and all the crazy characters in Far, Far Away. Hopefully, Shrek 5 is even better than Puss in Boots 2. That's what makes Puss in Boots 2 the best Shrek film in almost 20 years. Do you agree? See you next time.